Hello, all of you delightful beings out there, and welcome to the stream. I am Razim, and this is DevTales, where we're going to be working on our custom SCAR system, or Stories and Creatures in Alternate Realities. This system is available for open playtest on our Discord as well as itch.io, so go take a look at it and let us know what you think, everyone. We are also using the TF talkies today, so feel free to transform me to your heart's content. And apparently we have an anonymous skunk on the document.
What?
Congrats on the cute TF, whoever got that. Okay, so first things first. I do wish Arrow were here already, but I'm sure he'll be here soon enough.
Oh, first order of business. Allow me to remove my beanie and turn the fan on.
Ah, yes, very good.
Alright, my body's ready.
So, the first thing here that I think we could probably figure out without Era is damage for being buried alive.
Good topic.
I think instead of it just being buried alive, we should just come up with suffocation rules.
Well, we kind of have that with swimming already, but with being buried alive, you specifically have the side problem of, you know, when you're buried, you got crushing weight of dirt on ya. What the heck did you agree to watch? This is something that came up in one of our tabletop games recently, and we did not have an answer for it, Epic, so...
That's actually very funny.
I'm gonna leave the parenthetical inclusion of suffocation as a topic at the side in case.
Yeah, we should probably do that as well, though I think that that falls under the same rules as for swimming. Really?
Yeah, I mean, we do have like basic suffocation rules, but it's also like, you know, we added those like forever. We added that forever ago just to have something, and then it's just sat there. So
yeah, revisiting that wouldn't be a bad idea. But this is something that I mostly am looking towards you for, Tal, as the Math Dragon.
okay, so the problem with the weight isn't that the weight is going to kill you if you're buried alive. It's that it, you know, like further constricts your breathing. So mechanically, how I would run someone being buried alive by something.
I do want to clarify that this is also including scenarios like what we ran into where Sammy was digging through the ground, failed his roll, and the tunnel collapsed.
Well, yeah, but that would be... That would just be using rules for, like, something heavy has fallen on you.
Well, we need rules for that then.
Couldn't we just tack that onto, like, falling, like the falling rules, so that way the damage would also affect whatever gets, like, stops the falling?
What do you mean?
Okay, so for the falling rules, I mean, I guess we could make this be something distinct where it's like something heavy gets dropped and falls onto you in terms of distinct rules. We do, technically speaking, have falling rules and falling damage being a thing. So we could piggyback on that and have, like, the falling damage that would be rolled gets transferred to if it lands on someone. Like, let's say you fall 30 feet and you land on someone. Reasonably, I would also say that, like, you know, both you and the person that you dropped on each take the damage.
Is this a rule which only applies when someone has been dropped from a great height?
Yes, we do have rules for fall damage.
Yeah.
It's on page 75. And yeah, I would definitely say we should include rules for something falling, which can also translate, and we can put in a note that this is also what happens if, say, a tunnel collapses on you, for example.
Yeah. For an ongoing problem like being buried alive or being like crushed under the weight of something like turn over turn, I would just recommend have that apply a dot of like whatever basic type best fits the situation. Like, because, you know, if you want to use like a classic, if you're getting like crushed, like, you know, two spike traps are like closing in on you and like, you know, you're trying to like push them away from you, but you're stuck there for now, that might be like, you know, 6 piercing dot per turn. Because, you know, for dots, the damage type matters for what difficulty you're looking for on the roll. So if it's an ongoing issue like that, a dot might be the best solution.
Yeah, that makes sense.
That way it's turn over turn, and like, you know, you might have a turn where you take more damage, you might take less damage, but it, like, you know, chances are you're taking damage turn over turn over turn, so you better find a way out of there.
Is that what you want me to put down then?
I think we need a little bit more detail real quick.
What, you mean on my end or from Tal?
I needed to step away to apply some medicine real quick. Mostly from Tal. So, I definitely think that this will probably be a matter of, you know, difficulty changes based on the situation. So, like, if you are suffocating and being crushed, the damage from both are probably going to have a lower difficulty. I don't think we want to call it a dot, though, because that would imply that they can use cleanse to get rid of it, and, well,
Yeah,
you can't really just force of will yourself out of being under a rock.
Well, technically speaking, if the situation is what's applying the dot, it gets applied every turn. But yeah, no, it would just be like, you know, it would probably, we already have the rules for condition damage, so it would probably just be, you know, condition damage. But when I say a dot, I'm literally just saying like a damage over time.
That's fair.
And
I kind of
But,
like the
'cause then
idea
also-
that it will, the longer you are being crushed, the higher that dot becomes, though.
Yeah, which is also probably, decent. Like, if something starts out with, like, by applying 2 dot to you every turn, and then it's like, okay, well, that's really easy to deal with. As that grows, it's going to become far less deal-withable. My eloquence knows no bounds. But I mean, we could go with, like, basically making it so that way if... Do we want to make rules for it being technically considered environmental damage?
I would say so, yes.
That way, if we have rules for discrete environmental damage, it could also be applied to overly harsh weather, for example. So,
Perhaps maybe what we can do is an intensity thing. First off, we would probably say that all environmental damage bypasses integrity. Because it doesn't really matter how much armor you've got if you're,
being crushed under a boulder.
yeah.
So yeah, environmental damage bypasses negations and integrity.
It will still do damage to armor first, but...
Yeah, I was about to say, yeah.
It ignores negation and integrity. I'd say we allow the storyteller to decide an intensity for it, and it'll be... We'll just call it all environmental damage and include severe weather, crushing, etc. on that.
Yeah. Now, here's an interesting question. Do we want things like protect to work against environmental damage?
I'd say... I would say no.
A prudent choice.
Hello, friendly creative seal. Thank you for that follow. Like, on the one hand, it does make sense that it would be able to work. But at the same time, you can literally use protect over and over and over every turn, and thus you could literally indefinitely be under that boulder. Without taking any damage.
Yeah.
So I would
Now,
just
that
say
is-
no.
Yeah. Now, I will say that does, like, lend to some bonuses, actually, where, like, the character is focusing on putting up a barrier that's stopping themselves from being crushed, but if they ever have to take their focus off that barrier, it's going to get really bad for them. Like, there is something to be said for that kind of thing.
We'll leave it up to storyteller discretion then.
Yeah, I was about to say, like...
I would
'Cause,
say at most it'll reduce the dot by 1, maybe 2.
Yeah, because it's a thing where it's like, would that really help if you're trying to go through, like, whether it be protected or insulated, would that really help if you're trying to march through a volcano as a shortcut and you're, like, getting environment, like, the heat getting to you and causing you damage? Probably not, actually. But for something where it's, like, something heavy getting dropped and you're trying to put up a barrier, like, you see that all the time in different media where, like, something really big is happening and, like, trying to crush them and they're throwing up a desperate barrier to try and hold it back. So it really does depend on the situation, but we might want to, we could default it to no and then say, but the circumstances, yada, 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 give a small example.
Alright. Those notes are looking good so far, Matteo. Just make sure you put in storyteller can bypass.
Can bypass what?
They just put that in, and that'll be enough for me to know. But it's basically, they can say that, yes, protect can be used. This is in regards to protect, and yeah, there you go.
Yeah, protected / insulated or whatever.
Yeah, they can decide to allow it somewhat, but yeah. So let's go ahead and take a look at fall damage, see if that is still where we want it. A falling character will fall at a rate of 300 feet per round. This movement happens at the start of the character's turn. When impacting a surface while falling, they will suffer 1.d10 of damage per 5 feet they have fallen after the first 10 feet. Players may attempt an acrobatics roll to reduce the damage they take, each success being able to change a 10 to a non-exploding 1 success result. Oh, okay, that's what I meant by that. Or they can simply reduce the damage by 1 point. While turns technically happen at the same time, a character will begin falling at the start of their turn after something causes them to start falling. So if someone is shoved off of a cliff by an enemy, players that have their turn between the enemy and the soon-to-be falling character can act and try to save them. This can be explained away as the character scrambling at the edge of the cliff or something, and the player having enough initiative to dash over to save them before they fall. I think those rules are pretty good. Mostly the numbers there. Do you think those are still good, Tal, or should we...
Let's see. Numbers are pretty decent. I'm not too sure about keeping it at what's the word for it? I'm not sure how the changing the 10 to a non-exploding success, because like, you know, in practice that's like, you know, pretty good, but also the simplicity of just being like every success you roll in your acrobatics just removes that amount of damage.
I think I'm good with removing the non-exploding thing.
Yeah, because, you know, technically speaking, that is better, like, as a choice, generally speaking, unless specifically for true combo. But also, you know, the simplicity of just going reduce damage by that amount.
Yeah, definitely add that to the notes, Matteo, but I am going to make that change real quick in the document because it's a quick one.
Okay.
Alright, I'm actually here now.
Hi, Era.
Oh, yeah.
Era.
Hi, Era.
Hello.
Just to recap you slightly, we were discussing rules for things like being buried alive and environmental damage.
Okay. Sorry, I might be a little useless today. I've got a hell of a migraine.
You're fine. Just so that way you know what we decided, stuff like buried alive applies damage over time, which means it increases every turn. Environmental damage bypasses integrity and negations, but still deals damage as normal. So, like, if you have armor, the armor will soak some of it. Storyteller determines the intensity of it, and things like protect don't work against it generally, but the storyteller may bypass depending on the circumstance, like, you know, holding back something with a protect every turn, like, might
Sounds
reduce
fine.
damage.
Yeah, that sounds fine to me.
Yep. And we're simplifying the falling rules, so that way it's just, instead of doing extra shit, the acrobatics roll reduces damage they take by 1 point per success.
So, how much damage do we want for the intensity, though? I figured we'd go with the standard 3 intensity. But how much damage do we want per intensity? For crushing, you know.
Is this in terms of dots or just automatic successful damage?
I think it'll probably, considering our suffocation is just instant successful damage, I think we should keep it simple by keeping it similar to that. But I guess have it increase per round. I guess we could just do 1 damage per round. And that will, of course, increase each round that you are crushed.
You know, round 1, you take 1 damage. Round 2, you take 2. Round 3, you take 3. So on and so forth.
Yeah.
That sounds fair to me.
Yep, sounds fair.
Yep.
And that would be intensity 1, intensity 2 would be 2, 4, 6, and then intensity 3 would be 3, 6, 9.
Yeah.
What do you want me to put in the notes for that?
Put in under the buried alive first off. We'll put in that it is standard 3 intensity. And it'll be 1 damage per intensity per turn. Building. I'll know what that means. All right. And I think that's good for that section, that discussion. Oh, wait, we didn't actually discuss impact damage. You know, something actually, you actually having something fall on you.
Wouldn't that strictly depend on the weight of the object or size of the object?
True. I think I'll ask you to come up with some numbers on that, Tal. Some various size category. We'll probably just use size categories first off.
I'm about to say, if I'm doing this, I'm just going to use size category. But
Yeah. Keep it simpler, but we'll just have you come up with some numbers on that and discuss them next time. Sound good?
Yeah, it's just gonna be size category times distance moved.
Yeah.
Effectively. It'll also probably be like a power roll, but you know.
Yeah, I'm good with that.
Because then otherwise, first of all, it makes it interactable and varied, and second of all, you would immediately have people pick up the flying movement and you know, do the funny BG3 drop object from very, very high up area and just like demolish entire bosses instantly.
Oh boy.
Hey, look, if I'm making the rules for it, I'm accounting for that.
Fair enough.
They aren't just gonna be able to do that shit.
And yeah, Epic, there's a lot of stuff that does make sense IRL, but we gotta try and strike that balance between realism and fun.
Throwing an owlbear from the top rope.
Yeah. That's fun in BG3, but it's not as fun as in an actual tabletop.
Yeah, I hope you're okay, Burb. I hope it's
Yeah.
not something serious.
Uh-oh, what happened to Burb?
They just came. Their legs hurt?
Damn. I'm sorry, bro.
A lot of walking. Yeah, no, that can happen.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
As much as some of us like spreadsheets of math,
Most people don't.
I'm very aware that the way that me and some of my friends have fun would be considered extremely strange, but then again, we're all Kenshi and Factorio players, so like, we'll
But anyways, on to the next thing here. I did want to revisit death and unconscious rules. They are a little clunky. From playtesting, they felt a little clunky for people.
all right.
Mainly in the terms of when you go into unconscious.
Yeah. The way that we discussed at one point, and I thought that it still worked, apparently it doesn't, was when you go half negative. But apparently that is not what it is.
Yeah, that
people should be being knocked unconscious literally constantly.
I think that's what we're going to go with, though. That was my proposal there. As it just they don't hit unconscious when they go below 0, but they do go unconscious when they are at half of their max HP and negative.
That would make more sense. Yes, I like
Do we want
that.
this to be derived from their current or their original? Because I know death is based off of the original.
I would say original.
Okay.
Yeah, because
So-
wounds. I don't think wounds will be a consideration on that.
and I'm assuming getting healed up to 0, you regain consciousness, correct? Or is it back up to half?
I think if they reach that point, we should have it be where they need to get back to at least 0 before they go back to conscious.
Yeah, it should be 0.
That way,
Even
it's
if
not
it's
just
just them having to. Yeah.
That way, it's not just 1 HP, you're back. Oh, you're still in negatives? Well, you're going back down again.
Up, down, up, down, up, down.
I can see that actually happen if we stay the way we are before the change.
To be fair, there was a point in, what was the cantrip? Spare the Dying or something like that in 5th edition, where before some errata rules came around, that was how people thought it worked. So somebody would just...
5e also the... Yeah, isn't 5e also the one where if you're below 0, even 1 point of healing puts you at 1 HP?
Yeah, there's that too.
Yeah. Which I also greatly dislike.
Yes, well, 5e is not a good system. Fight me.
I don't think you're going to get any arguments here.
It is a great gateway drug.
It is. But the moment you actually look, it is a book that has a really nice looking cover with terrible binding, and the writing's a mess.
You should play 5th edition for anywhere from 3 to 6 months and then move on to something that actually uses a brain cell.
But let's move away from that. So, when their health is negative, at least half of their maximum HP. Do clarify with that original max HP, Maddie. Because wounds do reduce your max HP.
Oh.
Woohoo!
Alright, so I think we're good on that. Oh, we already had it in here that to recover from either of these states, you must reach at least 1 HP. We'll just... We'll leave it at 1 HP. Partially because I don't want to just update it to change it to 0, but I'm okay with it being 1.
I think that's originally because I think it. Yeah, because we had the original thing there because no, we should leave it like that. The reason for that is because the health drop happens at 0 or less, so they need to get to 1, because otherwise they'll wake up at 0 and then immediately pass back out.
Yeah.
So that's why we had it at 1.
If you reach your max HP and negative HP, or suffer damage equal to your current HP plus your max HP after integrity from one source of damage, you will experience death. I think we should go ahead and just do away with the one source of damage part. Just have it be if you reach your max HP and negative HP, you die.
Yeah. No, I'm fine with simplifying that. Because that's effectively what the other one says, anyway. It's just far more verbose.
So remove that. And clarify original max HP. Okay, so I think we're good with that. Boss second turn. Because bosses are supposed to get a second turn. Do we want to specify that is half of their original initiative, or half of, like, in between the players somewhere, or do we want it to just be original roll? Or they roll for initiative for the second roll as well?
I mean, me personally... Go ahead.
Well, the original idea there was helping to reset a hit stun, as well as... It was originally intended that that players would have, turns between the boss's turns.
Yeah.
So...
Yeah, well, because the thing is that, in my opinion, which version of it that they want, like how they want their initiatives to be set up, is depending on the boss and the boss's strategy, rather than there just being one blanket best option. Because, for example, if the boss takes 2 turns in a row, it could spend its first turn doing like an all-out fury attack on someone and shred all of one person's defenses, and then use their second turn for, like, a whammy ability. And so that is, like, that could be a boss strategy right there, but that doesn't work if we don't let them have 2 turns in a row. However, for a lot of other bosses, they want to spread out their turns to minimize the amount of hit stun that they're taking. To, like, if they don't have a specific strategy like that in mind. So I think it should be left up to storyteller discretion. Because also, here's the thing. We already have rules for voluntarily lowering your initiative.
That is true. I guess we'll put in those other 2 options and leave it to storyteller discretion for their boss. Then I'm good with that.
Yeah, because that, like, there's going to be bosses where, like, you want them to spread out because, like, they're supposed to be defensively good, but that doesn't work if the 5th person in a row hits your uses a strike against your defensive super boss, and you're just sitting there like, well, shit, there goes literally all of their defenses.
With that, also put in that they can also, for you, Maddie, that they can also choose to just purposely put it in between half of the players. Because the storyteller can do that anyways, but we're going to specify that in the rules, mostly for rules lawyers.
Rules lawyers, and then also reminding people that they can do that.
That too. Alright, so there's that one off the list. So something that's come up, especially with Mattio's game, some games may have you at a weaker form, such as a human form. How do we want to handle changes to stats with that?
Well, we technically already have rules for that. Temporary de-evolution.
This would be a little bit different from that, I feel. But we could go with those rules.
My suggestion would be go with those rules unless you create an entire system. With Mattio's game or something like that, it might actually behoove you to have a second character sheet with a set as tribute scale.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just saying, like, for more general things, like being turned into a weaker form, we do already have the temporary de-evolution rules. And those are pretty harsh and kind of work a lot of times for it. If you want to take it a full step further than that, then, it's probably for the best if you just come up with, like, custom stuff for your game for how that's exactly going to work.
That makes sense.
Because per technical, like, de-evolution, it's already -1 to all attributes.
Yeah, that's fair. Alright, so that is taken care of. I think though that would be a good way to handle that. I want to come back to that later. So something that came to me today. First off, I want to preface this by saying we will put in a note that this is an advanced tactic that players could utilize, but it's on them to calculate it. But I think there could be some interesting possibilities for allowing multiple damage types on moves, and especially things like weapons and such, instead of all of it being one type. The way I think that would be handled would be, say you've got 3 power for Sonic on your move, 6 power for basic bludgeoning. You would roll each of those individually based on the target's, resistances, and then just add the results together is how I think that would work. But wanted to run that by you guys, because I think that could open up some interesting possibilities. And also we need to discuss, like, how much we may want that to cost in XP.
I guess for me, like, I was already, like, originally, like, oh, this was a discussion we had a while ago. I got shot down on it due to...
Real quick, hey Octo, sorry to hear you've been sick. Hope you feel better soon, though.
Yeah, I feel
Especially
better.
for tomorrow.
I know a lot of people that are sick, actually.
You gotta go, kidnap a doctor tomorrow.
Yeah, go kidnap a doctor tomorrow. Originally, I was actually in favor of doing things like expanding the basic triangle to the elements as well, like the other elements, so you could have like lightning piercing damage. But so on one hand, I like the idea of making like obviously multiple damage types, like if you want to mix damage types. On the other hand, I I can instantly see where this can get very out of hand if you're doing individual rolls on like the power for each type. Because also, here's the thing to think about: they're going to have to they're able to and going to have to like constantly shift the amount because of things like their skills factoring into damage. Like this isn't just power, because there's also the skills, the attribute contribution.
On that front, they would pick a primary type for the move still, and that is what their attribute and skill would apply to. So the secondaries are always going to be just whatever you add for those in power.
Yeah.
But yeah.
I might prefer if we make it so that way it's something like how meld or combo works for combining damage types.
Well, combo is essentially the way I described it.
Yeah. I guess it is.
It's not two different, it's not two separate, roles, it's just... Or it is two separate roles and they just get added together. It just wouldn't be two separate accuracy.
Yeah.
Which, for the sake of stab, that's why you would pick what your primary one is on it. And I will say that I got this inspiration thanks to that Kyber crystal I found with the Sonic today. I was like...
Oh, okay.
That was the inspiration behind it. It's like, well, I mean, the lightsaber wouldn't necessarily do, Sonic damage for all of it, but having the ability to add on a little bit of Sonic damage on top of the slashing or whatever we go with for lightsaber damage would make sense. Hey there, Riley.
I still don't know how I feel about splitting it up that much just due to logistical things, but also, like, I am definitely in favor of, like, people being able to make multiple elemented attacks.
I think the simplest way is... It's one of those, like, I'm leaning towards keep it simple.
Yeah.
It's
well,
like
technically,
you got...
the simplest way is just have it be both types simultaneously, because we already have the can't go above or below 2.
True, but I think we do need it a little bit more complicated than that.
Yeah, I'm just saying if it's just like, pure kiss, it's just have it be both types simultaneously, like how meld works.
Yeah, you are correct on that. That would be the simplest way. Which I'm
which
still
also
not
now
in
brings
favor
up
of
another
meld on
question
that.
of if it does work differently than meld, what happens if you meld two multi-type moves together? Do like the primaries and the secondaries combine their typings?
I still prefer the route of going with combo for meld, personally. I was kind of overruled on that, but that's still something that I preferred, was they roll each damage type based on the resistances and then just combine the results together.
Yeah, the one thing that I'm like, on one hand, I definitely understand it. On the other hand, it also ends up slowing down combat a lot more if anyone engages in it. Because now they're doing multiple rolls.
Well, tiebreaker here, Era.
I'm a little torn at the moment.
Yeah.
Because I don't dislike the idea. It's just, how do we make it in a way that's not so complicated and streamlined? One option is definitely, as you guys said, just splitting up the damage between the two types, which is common between a lot of games, or just calling it the same damage. I'm slightly leaning in favor of you name the power that goes towards each damage type in the initial creation of the move.
Well, we're mostly... The main thing that we're kind of discussing here is, like, do we have each damage type rolled individually? Or...
That's what I was meaning, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, no, that's what he was saying. He was partially leading to. Because the thing that I'm just really worried about is if someone actually engages with this, and, you know, if they're engaged with this, they probably also like the idea of combining elements anyway and combining things. They're liable to use things like meld, which if we also change meld to work like how it does with this, just in order to make the system consistent, that means that very easily every single, like, you know, time they meld, they are making 4 separate power rolls for one attack.
Hey, Ido. Hey, Gamma. I mean, yes, but at the same time, that may not always be the case. It does depend on resistances. Like, if they are neutral to 2 or 3 of those damage types, then you can just combine all of those together.
People are not going to do that logistically.
Fair.
They're going to go, this is how many I roll for each type, this type is neutral. This is how many I roll for this type is resistant.
Do you have any thoughts on this, Maddie?
Not to amount to anything, not really.
Okay. Figured I'd ask. Because one of my big issues with the combo and meld operating differently is just the fact that I want to lean towards that consistency across the system. And meld is essentially just a solo combo. So I want to lean towards meld being the same as combo, or combo being the same as meld.
Well, combo definitely shouldn't be like meld, just out of the pure fact that someone else trying to join in on you should not make it harder on you. Because let's say someone tries to combo and they only have electric and the...
I'm talking about just the damage side, but...
No, this is what I'm talking about. If someone uses a bad damage type, like, as a part of a combo, and doesn't provide a ton of dice, like, let's say you're providing 3/4 of the dice because you have a high power move, and they're trying to provide their thing for the extra effects that it gives, because, you know, combo combines all of it, so they have some nice extra effects, like remove positive condition, and they're trying to, like, help you with the remove positive condition so your big damage can go through. If it's an electric type damaging move and the boss resists electric, if it works like how meld does, it will raise the damage difficulty on all your dice.
Yeah.
So combo should not work like meld.
If we did this, would we even need meld?
Yes.
Yes.
This would be a separate... It would be similar to meld, but it's still just one move that you're using rather than 2 attacks with meld.
Also, meld you can mix and match with, like, if you have 2 different... Like, let's say I have 5 attacks. That is a lot of different meld combinations depending on how I want to utilize the attacks and what I'm fighting. This is just having a discrete upgrade to specifically one move to add on some flex damage. But, yeah, if we do this, definitely speaking, how combo work should have preference, just because otherwise trying to combo with someone could hurt you.
And I think we should swap meld to work similar to combo, and then this will work thus as well similar to combo, where it's two separate roles. It is more work, it is more rolly, or more individual dice pulls. But overall, I think it's the best way to handle it.
Yeah. We could always just do what we normally do whenever there's one of the things where it's like, okay, this has benefits, this has benefits. We might just, like, put it in as, like, an optional.
I could go...
like, yeah.
An optional rule set.
Yeah, an optional alternate.
Back the meld, the current meld rules as an optional, and then the base would be functional, similar to combo.
Yeah, because obviously when it comes to... There's going to be a ton of people who are just like, I don't want to roll 4 separate dice pools for one attack. I just want to go, it's this, 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 and my plus or minus difficulty.
Though I will also point out that the way meld currently works kind of has a potential opposite effect of... You know, you put in 1 damage of something that they are 2 times weak to, and you have the most of your damage is something that they are only resistant 1 time to. Well, suddenly your entire roll they are now weak to, just because this 1 point of damage they are super weak to. Which doesn't feel right either.
That doesn't feel quite right, but it also doesn't have the same problem of you trolling your teammates by trying to help.
Well, yeah, but... Alright.
And that's mostly why I was worried about the whole idea of making combo work like that, is because otherwise you could, on purpose or accidentally, kind of troll. And not, like, just yourself, but, like, actively make your team's life harder with it. Which is partially why why I made sure that for the body boost, you could not re-roll successful dice, because then, technically speaking, someone assisting you could use a body boost and re-roll all your 10s.
Why they would do that, well, it would clearly just be to troll, but yeah.
It would literally just be to troll, but you already know that there are people out there where, if they felt slighted about something, would do that to someone.
True.
Which is why I just like to head it off and make it so it doesn't even work like that, actually.
But alright. So... sounds like we are good with meld being changed to follow combo rules for damage. Go ahead and note that down, Maddie. 1 move, multiple types. You can just put this all down under that same category, Maddie. Okay, I'll take care of it, Maddie. No worries. He has been interrupted.
Commandeered.
Yeah. Okay, so for adding a second damage type to a move, I feel like that should be a very cheap cost. Because obviously it's not going to come with power or anything else. But I guess 5 XP to then add another damage type.
So we're taxing people for this.
Or I guess,
5
do
XP.
we want to tax them? I guess is the first question, rather. I kind of
I'd say-
assumed we would, but...
I'd say, like, I could see it either way, because either, first of all, having a different damage type on a move is not actually, technically speaking, always a good thing. It also means that it's more likely that that a damage type on your move hits a resistance. Because I will remind you, our system favors resistances slightly more than offensive effectiveness, because types all resist themselves, so all types have one more resistance than they have weakness. This means that a dual typed character that doesn't have basic type is obviously the exception, has 2 more resistances than they have weaknesses. So multi-damage typing a move is not necessarily always a good thing, and in fact is more likely to slightly hurt you than help you. But in exchange, you now have a move that is also not as likely to get completely shut out by someone just having A typing.
Fair enough. So, no tax on it?
I'm saying no tax. Just
Yeah, I
because...
really see a reason to tax.
Yeah. Because it is, technically speaking, like, the tax on it is just you're making it twice as likely that a damage type on your move has a resistance on the target.
Burb, I'm going to say that no healing moves cannot be multi-type, unless it's all on the damage side for healing moves, or for the damage types.
Well, we gotta remember,
We do-
healing is a power damage category move.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, but... I mean, I guess we can allow that, because there is a...
I'm saying I'm fine with it, but, like, also if you make a move that has 1 healing power of every single type, like, okay, cool? I don't... What does that really do? You get to roll 1 dice at difficulty 6.
Yeah, fair enough. Alright, but we are good on this then. Anything else we want to note on this? I'll take that as a new. Alright, so... something that has come up a lot is how much can they change the starting move? Because the starting move, it is specifically basic type, it is specifically, it's basic type, it has 4 power. Obviously, they can build on that, but can they change the type? Can they make it ranged, etc., etc.? I don't know why you can't... Oh, cooldown, Burb. Except the cooldown should be over by now. Yeah. Try it again, Burb.
Well, one restriction that I'm fine with lifting is, it starts as physical and you have to get permission to make it ethereal. I'd say that I'd be fine with us making it so that way it gets, changed to pick either physical or ethereal for the starting move. As one thing. Because right now it starts as physical and you need specific permission to change that.
Okay. Do we want to just let them kind of retrain it like everything else, it just permanently has that 20 XP discount on power 4? Or do we want to have restrictions on it at all? Or otherwise?
Don't quite a few people just end up selling that move off at some point?
You're technically not supposed to be able to, but people ask their storytellers, and their storytellers just go, yeah, sure. Because technically selling it does nothing because it is comprised of discount XP, which means you can't sell it off for anything. But a lot of storytellers will just kind of shrug at people and go, dude, it's 20 XP, sure. So, honestly, I'm kind of fine if it gets, if people, like, retrain it or all of that, but, like, you know. People probably shouldn't, but people will do that anyway.
They can just turn it into whatever they want.
They're going to do that anyway. Because reasonably, as a storyteller, and like, you know, y'all are storytellers too, so if someone goes to you and goes, hey, look, I want to change my starting move to be the same type as me because it feels useless otherwise, a lot of storytellers are just going to go, yeah, sure.
All right, sorry about all that.
Not a problem.
Honestly, my feeling is that when it comes to stuff like this, if a reasonable storyteller will just shrug at you and go, yeah, sure, like, that's fine, then they should probably just be allowed to do that in the first place. We could always gate it, like, ever so slightly by saying that, I mean, I don't really see the point in gating it even, but, like, we could. How do you guys feel about it?
I'm good with it. My only restriction would be that the 20 XP discount can only go towards power.
Yeah. That's
would
a
be
fine
the-
little gate on it.
That would be the only restriction.
Does
What
it
were
have
you
to
going to
be...
say, Era?
Nothing, never mind.
And what were you about to say, Era? Or Tal?
I was about to say, we should probably restrict it to you being able to change it to a type that you have affinity for. That should probably be, like, the only real gate on it.
That's fair.
Because you can also just buy affinities later on anyway, so, like...
Alright. Another thing here. Non-lethal damage. We've discussed it a few times. I know you guys were very against adding another health pool for non-lethal damage. But I feel like it might be warranted. I know it's an extra field, it's an extra thing to keep track of, but considering several people do use non-lethal, and there's also the consideration of, do we want to let it dissipate after a scene? Because there is a significant difference between non-lethal and lethal damage. At least I feel like there should be a consideration of difference on that, on how it functions and such, especially in terms of wounds.
Wouldn't that be completely campaign specific then? Because in Pokemon, don't you typically just consider all damage non-lethal? Unless otherwise.
Well, that actually depends entirely on what kind of a thing the storyteller has going on.
I feel like it's something that we should establish. Like, obviously, storytellers can always change how things function. But it is something that we should settle system-wide. If you guys really think that we should have non-lethal damage be in the same pool as lethal, then okay. We can continue, we can have it be that way. I just feel like it should be separate. It should have some different rules for it. Well, we're not talking about that, Mala. By default, all moves are lethal, but they are also capable of being non-lethal. You can just decide that you're not doing lethal damage in most circumstances. Weapons
And weapons
have a slight...
also are... Weapons start as being able to do both, and then you can buy a negative trait that restricts your ability to not do a type.
Yeah.
Which people like until they realize, oh wait, I chose lethal, and now we're trying to take a captive. Uh-oh.
Which personally, I'm feeling like that we may want to take that away, or at least make it not a negative, or do something about that, because people... We've had that pop up twice now of people realizing after the fact. And when we've got, you know, a pool of like 7 games, that's a significant chunk.
On the other hand, it counts as a negative, and they're intentionally taking this on their weapons.
Fair. But that's a whole other thing.
Yeah, that is a whole other thing. I think that if you choose a negative trait and it bites you in the ass at some point, the negative trait is doing its job. But
that's fair.
Regardless of that.
But yeah, as far as lethal versus non-lethal, what are thoughts?
Well, if we do it separately, I don't know if it should go away after the scene, maybe at like next rest. That way, if you have like a sparring match and then get jumped right after, all of the damage from the spar doesn't just go away.
I'm good with that. It can be the next short or breather, or
next
whatever rest.
Just whatever rest they have, just next rest. Putting in a separate tracker, I'm like kind of against it, but I'm making the new sheet right now anyway, so I'm in the middle of blowing stuff up.
I'm worried about the complexity. I know that some people have already had some issues with the complexity of certain angles of the sheet as is.
Yeah.
I'm not comfortable adding more to it right now.
But this is also something that... I mean...
This is also just game design choice.
Yeah, this is game design choice, and if we're going to add it, it should be earlier rather than later.
I was about to say, yeah. I'm about to say, if we're doing it, we should really do it now, because if you try and include this later after I've already made a new sheet version, and now I have to include extra lines, I'm going to throw something.
I still don't think it's a good idea, personally. Like, I see where you're coming from, but it sounds like it feels needless to me. It feels like just an additional thing that is unnecessary.
It feels like filler.
Well,
yeah.
To me, I feel like it's necessary because lethal and non-lethal are vastly different types of damage. And you can recover from something that's non-lethal much faster than you can. Like, if you get slapped with the flat of a blade, you're going to recover from that much faster than getting cut by the edge.
I'm not going to comment. There's only one system, one tabletop system that I'm aware of that has a dual health type system, and it doesn't work off of subdual. It has a different connotation to it. I don't have a good example of a system that treats non-lethal damage in an individualistic way to that layer.
Pathfinder does.
It does, but you don't have a separate HP pool.
You effectively do, with how it actually handles the rules.
You mark it differently, but they still equal. If you still hit 0 with them combined, you still go unconscious.
Oh, that's still what I'm planning here.
Yeah. No, he's talking about, like, putting a separate tracker.
Essentially just a subdual damage tracker that will dissipate faster and easier than lethal.
I thought you were talking about another health bar.
No.
No, it'd be putting in another tracker. Like, keeping track of it separately. Which is also why I'm like, Pathfinder does this. What are you talking about?
That's why I was confused, because I heard the word another bar, and I'm like, why are we putting in yet another bar? We don't need another bar.
I was meaning like another line on the HP thing on the sheet for subdual or non-lethal damage. But yeah, it'll still function the same as lethal damage. The only exception will be that if you go below 0 and you have only taken non-lethal damage, then you will not suffer a wound, is what I would propose. But that would be just a minor note on the document.
No, that'd still be important, so that way people are sparring and all that. They don't wound each other. Just
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah, I don't... Because we have, what, that would still be another spot, though, because we have health. We have,
I was honestly, not the spent resources, but the resources box. I was thinking there would be a pretty decent place to cannibalize.
We already have, like, 3 forms of HP.
Well, yeah, but that's because of the different types of temporary that you're able to get. So I was not going to be putting this in the quick reference stats, because this does not need to be quickly referenced. Because keeping track of how much non-lethal damage you've taken is great and all, but only matters upon your next rest, usually. If we're doing it where non-lethal damage falls off at whatever next rest you have. So it only need to be referenced, like, occasionally. But I have, like, a section here, because we need to discuss some sheet things. So this, at least the sheet logistics of it can be discussed in a little bit.
The sheet, we can worry about. The sheet is something.
No, this is about what I need to because I have a list of things that I'm thinking about adding to the sheet and taking away from the sheet, and I want to review that before I go and do it.
What I was going to say there was the sheet is a separate issue here.
Yeah.
To deciding whether we should be tracking non-lethal damage separate. Like, yeah, the sheet is a concern, but I don't think it should. We can figure out a way to arrange the sheet to be more readable and easily used. But the sheet itself should not, in my opinion, influence what makes sense for the system as a whole.
Because I can make the sheet work. The sheet will work.
And, like, Pathfinder's character sheets have all of these different health pools as well. Not, like, the only thing is that it doesn't have the restorative healing. Which is a...
They do have the temporary. So
but
we
they
have one more line there.
We have one more line. But for that, it works. There are ways to make a sheet work, it's just we haven't quite gotten to the point of designing the sheet in a way that is more new player friendly, but also I argue that every sheet is not new player friendly, because you look at a character sheet for a system and if you know nothing about the system or tabletop in general, you're going to be scratching your head at that. Doesn't matter what the system is. Okay, I take that part back, but either way, focusing here, do we want it separate? I say yes. I say it clears up with a rest. Don't even need to roll for it. It's good to go with a rest. Otherwise, it functions the same aside from the wounds. Did I lose internet?
No, I mean,
No.
Oh, okay.
because I'm kind of in favor of like just game design wise, like making it so that way it falls off, like keeping it tracked separately and having it fall off on a rest is legitimately better game design wise. It's just also another thing to keep track of. But game design wise, it's definitely better for the game if that's how it works.
Hey, chat, any opinions from chat?
Yeah, any opinions for chat on this?
I'm not saying this so I can get up and get a drink really quickly.
I mean, chat is there, anyway, so we should poll them on it in case we do this publicly for a reason.
But
For
I
multiple
legitimately want
reasons.
feedback.
Yeah, I'm about to say we do actually like getting feedback about this sort of shit.
I do need water. I'll be right back, though. Get.
Well, Burbson, I do appreciate you mentioning that. We're more focused on like trying to make decisions for our system. So knowing that another system does or doesn't do something, like
It doesn't
that
really
doesn't really
help.
tell us. It doesn't really tell us other than, okay, well, someone else does this, but
My opinion should not be the weightiest, but I am in favor of any outcome that does not result in having more things to keep track of. I, as a relative outsider, already find it incredibly difficult to keep track of what's going on my own character sheet. But that's just this little panda's 2 cents.
yeah.
On
Well,
that
that is
end,
also the thing I was trying to like say is like the clear negative of doing this is it's another thing to keep track of.
but even then, we can just have it automatically calculated into the main HP, so it's just a
Yeah, I'm
matter of
literally-
whether... On the
Yeah.
character sheet, the difference would be, do you increase this number, or do you decrease that number?
Yeah,
That's
on
all
the
you'd
character
have to
sheet,
figure
what the
out.
difference is going to be is there's going to be a little box, and there's going to be a thing for, like, put non-lethal damage here, put lethal damage here, and it'll just auto-calculate your current HP based off of that.
Sure, you can make it auto-calculate, but especially in the case that you're, like, acronymizing it, I don't think automating
It's not
it makes the
acronymized.
character sheet... either way, I don't think it makes the character sheet more readable to have another field.
Technically, this isn't adding another field, I'd just be taking away a different thing that's less important than this.
Oh, gotcha.
This is not one being added, this is me going, okay, resources is, like, nice to have, but technically speaking, it's a conglomeration of other information around your sheet. So it's on my list of, like, in case I need that space, that shit is, like, first to go. So I looked at resources, and I went, yeah, I can get rid of that really easily and include this tracker into it, which is why I'm saying, when it comes to this sort of stuff with the sheet, like, I'll make it work. This is just more about just the game design aspect of it. Jits,
Hi there, Val.
Hey, Val. Jits, I will say, part of the reason is that our games are literally playtest games. So if we change something and it's not good, then we just undo it, because, like, the games that we run here are playtest games, and, like, I have other groups that I also, like, you know, have shown this to or play in a game of this with. So it's not just one big focus group, but, like, the games here are the playtest games for this. So if we make a change, we either apply it to all the games or we apply it to one to see if it's going good and then apply it to all. But this is more just something where it's literally just trying to decide if design-wise this is the correct decision. And yes, Jits, that's also why
We're asking chat, and we got.
We're asking chat, and then also, like I mentioned, I run games of this away from ZGF.
There have been off ZGF games that I've participated in as well. I've been proposing it to several groups for one-shots.
Yeah, so this is literally, like, for us, this kind of stuff is literally, the ZGF ones are like the official playtest ones, but we aren't just putting all the eggs in one big focus group basket.
That's another reason I said my opinion probably shouldn't be too weighty, because to hear Era tell it, I'm actually kind of smooth brain. I've only ever played 5e, and I'm used to that level of simplicity.
Yeah, this is definitely a step up from 5e.
Yeah.
Most systems are also a big step up from 5e, but...
I mean, hey, this is my first tabletop game, so...
Trust me, you're better off starting off with a more complicated system, in my opinion, anyways.
I was about to say, because it being your first or not, like, on one hand, you aren't familiar with tabletop customs as much, but on the other hand, you also aren't used to a simpler way of doing things.
I mean, you're not wrong, so... But at times it feels like it just feels a little overwhelmed. But again, that's me as a new player of tabletop itself.
Yeah. But I don't think people will be confused by the idea of tracking lethal and non-lethal damage separately, but that they both subtract from HP. I still think it, like, on one hand, it does add another thing to keep track of. I still think it makes the most sense for, like, good game design to keep track of it separately.
Yeah. And it's generally not an issue in Pathfinder either.
Yeah, but you rarely use it in Pathfinder.
Well, that's also because Pathfinder actively penalizes you most times for dealing non-lethal damage.
Yeah.
True. Unless your GM doesn't suck.
Yeah. But, like, you know, by base rules, people don't choose non-lethal options because the game makes you piss blood if you choose a non-lethal option.
So, from what I'm hearing about this, and since this is still like a playtest, I say just go at it and see how other players feel about it. I think that's the best way we can do right now for it.
I mean, it
Oh,
also
well-
has the benefit of being able to spar or do funny
Jib.
things like use your moves on other people without it causing, like, real and lasting damage. Because even if you're doing non-lethal, if you non-lethally smack someone and roll a bunch of 10s and they go down from it, you have now wounded them with what you thought was just going to be a funny little he-who smack.
Well,
And the damage stays, so it might be there, like, all of that day and, like, multiple other days.
yeah. That's part of why
Instead
I
of-
want to
Yeah.
kind of have it separate.
I was just hoping to see some of the players about.
Yeah, I put out a call for players. We got Azure here. Hi, Azure.
To be fair about the at everyone portion, we should probably just have like an at player role.
Or yeah, I was
That's
about
a
to
good
recommend
idea.
that, some kind of opt-in role.
Yeah.
Alright, let me post the question. I'll set up an opt-in role later. You're right, Ido, you're right. You're here. Sorry.
Well, did you? Oh, he just came in.
Yeah, he just like a couple minutes ago went finally home.
It's okay, I noticed you, Ido.
Ido, give us your opinion on a thing you don't have any idea of what we're talking about. Do it now.
Just yes or no.
You say yes or no. Choose one.
And don't
He
pull a Ren
actually
and
did hear
scream.
part of it.
I mean, agreeing
You're
with
not-
me at this point is being torn between two things and having a migraine. I wouldn't suggest that right now.
Also, Burbside, we have addressed you multiple times. We don't respond to every message, but we have talked to you multiple times. You aren't being
Yeah.
ignored.
Whoa, wait, no, you got to do the Twitch for Dummies thing. Sorry if I missed your messages. This game gets kind of crazy.
To be fair, are you dev sessioning right if you don't literally completely block out everything except the thought you're trying to formulate in a coherent manner?
Stupid English being stupid.
I don't think you're dev sessioning right if you're not constantly getting distracted. That's a joke.
Working in QA in real life and actually sitting at tables with devs and listening to them go off in random side tangents for 30 minutes. No, this is a very big truth.
Yeah, this just kind of happens.
Valerie, I invite you to come back sometime and see if you found something new. But for now, I'm on this channel, so call me cute all you like.
Madio, did you ban the word cute from your chat?
I didn't ban it. I just established a social penalty for using it, or anything that I deem to be a synonym.
Has established a social credit system.
Stop calling it that.
Where literally, if you go against what he wants, like calling him cute, you lose access to things like TTS.
First of all, it's not just blanket when you do stuff I don't like. It's only when you call me cute.
So when they do things you don't like, got it.
Yep.
Calling me cute is not the only thing they do that I don't like.
I know the question is we're currently contemplating whether or not we want to track non-lethal damage in a different box. With the idea being that it goes away, or non-lethal damage always clears after a long rest, it sounds like.
No, a rest of any kind.
A rest?
A rest.
Ooh. Okay, putting that
You
to
can
the
only
side.
take 2 intermediate rests per day.
But
Just like, you know.
okay, but one way or the other, just tracking non-lethal damage separately. Now, bear in mind, you'd still go unconscious if you hit the threshold. If your non-lethal and lethal damage together go to that point. So
I've
is
also
this something that would be... Go ahead.
I've also posted it in the ScarDev channel for the players to also respond there.
When is the next dev session?
2 weeks.
2 weeks from now.
Weeks.
But this would be something that we kind of need to get an answer for sooner rather than later, because it'll be in the next update, and Tao needs to know this for working or for finishing the next character sheet update.
Speaking of, we only have a limited amount of time, so while responses roll in, I'm kind of in favor of moving on to the next thing and revisiting this near the end.
Agreed.
Yeah, I was gonna say we probably should come back this later to get everybody's
Yeah.
response as well.
I know saying that he can see it working, so we can mark that.
Yeah, well, having responses is good, but we have a lot of potential responses coming in.
Yeah.
So again, we should probably just revisit this near the end.
Yep,
Yeah.
Okay.
So for players, if you've got more feedback, just put it in the ScarDev channel for now. Anyways, next thing that I've got, I feel like crit debuffs may be a little overly complicated, and I had an idea of maybe making 2s, 3s, and 4s subtract like 1s do when you have a crit debuff. So
Yeah, I
wanted to
definitely
put
like
out
that a
there.
lot more.
Because right now, it's this complicated thing of, like, the first debuff, 10s no longer explode, and it basically is difficulty change.
Yeah, it removes your ability to crit and then does a bunch of difficulty change. So technically speaking, having +3 difficulty, or plus -3 crit chance was no criticals and +2 difficulty, so you're rolling 9s. But, like, you know, on one hand, impactful. On the other hand, not
Complicated.
the clearest in terms of resolution.
I'd be fine with the flip of making 2s and 3s.
I'm fine with it increasing your failure chance, basically.
Takeaways.
Because increasing failure chance mostly does the same thing as increasing difficulty anyway, it's just cleaner.
And then they don't have to remove things from the formula for doing the auto roller and such. They just change the 1 to 2, 3, and 4.
Yeah.
So it sounds like that isn't improved.
Yep, and it means that your 10s still explode even if you have a bunch of crit debuff.
Exactly. Which is more in favor of more fun.
Although we might also need to update Soul now to, instead of it just being a result of a 1, we might want to update it to being a failing result. Like on a dice, a fail result. Because now more numbers than 1 can be a failure.
So what wording do you want me to put for the notes on this one, Tim?
Tal go in and answer that, but I'm answering a question to ScarDev real quick.
Here, I'm just gonna copy and paste the thing just without the question mark at the end.
Cool.
There you go.
I thought there was more to it than that. I'm sorry.
We were discussing an additional portion, but Zim's having to respond to things right now.
Yeah. This is the home of the wind god.
Oh, hey, Rob. Thanks for listening in. How many freaking accounts do you have?
Wow.
Well, we know he has at least 3 now.
Yeah, at least 3.
I'd ask why, but
You're not annoying us, Burb, no.
Isn't that like one of the first messages you sent since you were like talking about the whole ignored thing a while ago? I haven't seen you messaging recently. He put an and, there's at least 4 guys.
Huh? Oh.
There's at least 4 accounts. He put an and ... So there's at least 4.
Quick slightly unrelated, but quick Star Wars question for you, Tal. Vibro blades, their blades are always out, aren't they?
Usually not always.
Oh, okay.
They are not literally always 100% out. It's just that, generally speaking, for durable military hardware, they don't want it. They prefer fixed blades and stuff. Like, if you're having a vibro sword, there isn't much of a use for the sword not being as durable as possible. Usually, there are like daggers that are like switchblade versions, though.
Yeah, I was just asking because Roy just replied to me with an update for Furvis sketch, and they drew it with the blades withdrawn, and I was like, I don't think that's how that functions.
No, you can have it function like that. It's just people generally don't, because logically that makes it slightly less durable.
Fair. Alright, so next thing on the to-do list. That damage adjustment one is probably going to be a long discussion, but I kind of want to put it out there for consideration for next time we can discuss it. Because it does feel like chip damage is being done more often than not. But I don't know if that's because of bad rolls or imbalances or anything, or if we want to touch anything there. So kind of just consider that, you two, and we can come back to that next time.
I will say, from my combat testing and my knowledge of what's been happening in games recently, I can tell you exactly why that's happening. Just right now, this second.
Okay.
We're mostly fighting bosses and strong singular entities that have large defensive numbers, so there's a lot of chip damage going on. If you were fighting teams or groups of enemies that are actually on level with you as characters, there would be far less chip damage actually going on.
You know, fair enough. So I guess we don't need to discuss that.
No, that it's just the type of enemies that you've been fighting.
Yeah, that makes sense. Because, yeah, now that you mention it, we really have not had any non-boss fights.
no, we're missing a lot of the mooks.
Yeah, but it's mostly just been single entity boss fights, and like, besides that, there's not really a whole lot of mooks or ads or near peer teams that you're having to fight off a lot of the time. Because, like, if you think about like the Ace Trainer fight, for example, there was actually a lot of non-chip damage going on in that fight.
True.
But that's also because all of the power budget for the encounter wasn't just thrown directly into the Nido King, and we were just like, okay, we have to deal with this now. Because then otherwise, it would just be a lot of the team dealing chip damage and slowly wearing out the boss. Until eventually someone either combos or manages to, Nova and deal appreciable damage somehow by themselves.
Why is Nova? I forget, verb or noun.
Because it's Novas.
Yeah. Novas novingly.
Ah!
I mean, would you rather us turn rain into a verb?
Haven't we already?
Yeah, I thought that already happened with my bad luck.
I mean, it has, but we don't use it quite as frequently as Nova. We can make it into a true verb and start using it constantly too. If you'd like, that is an offer. We can start saying, "Man, I'm rolling like a rain tonight. I'm getting rains."
It's raining.
The joke that I've had for a while and I've been using sparingly is, "Man, it's really raining ones tonight."
Oh my god, that's so good.
Man, you just pulled a rain.
Funnily enough, for extremely crunchy dungeon crawling, that's literally what I just set up both sides and do that for my combat testing. That's literally how I combat test for this. I will either do a bunch of math to find out expected values and results and this and that, or I will literally sit down and do the equivalent, like the adult equivalent of having two action figures just like punch each other. Except that it actually gives me useful combat data from it because I note down results and things like that. So instead of it just being random bullshit, it's technically scientific.
Remember, the only difference between screwing around and science is writing it down.
Yep. But yeah, no, so that's why it's been a lot of chip damage. It's been a lot of single entity or low entity count fights.
Not getting many of them random encounters.
It was also something that came to my mind. Like, I specifically added that line during the sparring on Friday. Because a lot of that was chip damage only.
Yeah, well, Osmond does Fury attacks. Nova, and we all are dealing physical damage, which we're all tanky to. And Narashi, it has the, the crit parry build. So, we're not dealing a lot of damage to Narashi, and Narashi's trying out a new move.
They're strong against each other and use the type of damage that each other does.
Yeah.
The special attacker in the party was currently passed out in a bed.
If you hit if you used a special attack in there, or ethereal now, like the ethereal attacker, if you used a really strong ethereal combatant in the middle of there, they would have just been dealing a lot of actual damage.
Okay.
Just to explain the difference, Nova's physical integrity is an 8 and ethereal integrity is a 5. That is a legitimate, massive difference. So that's what's going on with that. So, character sheet additions and removals and shit. I will do the manual share thing. And then put link in dev. So obviously I've blown half of this stuff up and just kind of shoved stuff where it fit. And there's a lot of blank space now. That's normal. You notice it more if you scroll down slightly. The top still looks very full, and then you scroll down. Alright, so I have a little list that I made for myself, so that way I didn't put 15 bajillion entries into the thing. But first of all, expanded out armor and natural defenses like this to at least add some extra space for extra effects and traits. Still don't know if that is enough but it's certainly better than having one line of 4 items.
Where are you talking about?
Experimental bullshit. On the tab.
Well, yeah, but where exactly are you referring? Like,
The armor effects and natural defenses section.
okay, okay.
I was just pointing that out because that was something that I wanted a little bit of feedback on. Of it has a whole lot more space. I don't know if it's enough still.
What's extra max HP for?
In case you get a temporary evolution or get an effect that gives you extra max HP. Like, if you get an item where it gives you +1 max HP due to boon item or something, you could fit it in that slot. But it's also for things like getting a temporary evolution, you'd get 5 extra max HP. That's in the current version of the sheet, too.
I've actually just never noticed it.
Yeah, if you check one of your sheets, it's right there.
I'm sure it is, but you know how brains work.
Yeah, that's fair. But I'm good calling armor effects and natural defenses, like, good in terms of size for this, but, like...
I'm good with that.
So... Other things, I expanded out the maneuvers thing a little bit, just so it has, like, a nice little actual description of what they do at a glance. It doesn't do anything right now, but now if you click, like, sprint, the way that it'll work is it'll automatically have your evasions for you. Instead of having to calculate, and then recalculate because hit stun and all of that shit. But... here's the things that I was wanting checked off or denied. One thing, a defensive penalty tracker. We have the defensive penalty there. We've had it for a while. We've never included a tracker, and people barely keep track of it.
Oh, for using defensive maneuvers.
Using defensive maneuvers, the defensive penalty you get. And again, like, I will carve out the space and make it work on this without, like, you know, just shoving a bunch of stuff in here, making it even more cramped. But a defensive penalty tracker to keep track of that, because it's literally just +2s and -2s.
I would
I don't
say
see
yes. I would say let's try and move some of these things to other tabs.
That was another thing that I was going to put out, was a utility tab.
Something that, like, you could put the defense penalty in where health feats are, and move that to the feats tab.
Yeah, I was going to try seeing about putting in a little utility tab where it just has, like, little utility things like the roll calculator or your movement speeds or things like that aren't actually all that critical to being on the front.
Yeah.
But also just moving stuff to other tabs also makes sense for, like, the feats. Like, I could easily throw the health thing up over there. But I'm just talking about, like, you know, making a generalized utility tab, because, like, there's a lot of things in here that I think would be useful, and I have not actually found space for, like, even in my head, because they're useful, but they're not important.
Maybe we should start moving to the main character sheet being only stuff you need all the time, and then everything else in other areas.
Yeah, which I don't want to cause a bunch of tab load, because as you can see down at the bottom now, like, obviously original stat sheet is going to go. This is just more for, like, me referencing, and I made, like, a couple changes, but not really. Obviously you would, like, delete the Pokemon type reference or Scar type reference depending on the game. So there's 2 tabs that I could include on the bottom without completely overfilling everything in existence on tabs.
Honestly, one of the things that probably causes us a lot of causes a lot of people to look at the character sheet and be like, fuck, is the fact that we have a lot of quick reference things. Like, for which I am not saying to remove, because I like the fact that the maneuvers, you've got that little description of them. I really like that. I want that to stay. But that is probably one of those things that people are look at and are like, oh god, there's so much.
Yeah, of which I've already kind of half decided that I'm going to make a tab for conditions. And I'm just going to have all the conditions there listed with their resists on a tab. And we could either keep this little box here in case people want to use it, or we could just reclaim it and use the space and, like, declutter.
And excuse me if my brain's going backwards here. I think if we included a tab to track maneuvers, defensive maneuvers, stat changes, would help separate those things out a bit. And maybe exhaustion as well. Maybe not. That was a weird one.
Part of the, like, I'm saying stat changes kind of need to be on the front, because that gets interacted with, like, constantly.
Or at least it should.
At least it should. If that will get interacted with a lot. Obviously, things like a size category tracker will be going on, like, my proposed utility sheet. Or a size, feet limit, primary range trackers, that would be on the utility sheet.
But
I could also make a combination condition and utilities one, because
That
the
might
condition
work.
one will only take up a certain amount of space.
yeah.
Putting conditions and utilities on the second page might help. And
Yeah.
while I understand where you're coming from, GibGab, unfortunately, a lot of the roleplay elements and a lot of the combat elements are essentially the top part of the sheet, the very top of the sheet. That's the attributes, expertises, and skills.
Those are
Yeah.
pretty well combined in the system anyways.
Yeah, they all kind of interact constantly anyway, so that being there is kind of fine. Other things that I was thinking about moving to this front page would be an accessory section for people keeping track of their accessories, because now we have those. And a section for KO and death points, like on a tracker. Like just going, hey, here's your KO point, here's your death point. I was gonna put that with the with other things, but like, you know what I mean when I say that, right?
Yeah, the wounded tracker.
Yeah. But
Having
basically
a
just
wounded
going,
tracker.
here, regardless of your current max HP from wounds or whatever, here is your KO and death point. Just kept track of separately, so that way people don't have to fuck with it constantly. Because as easy as it is, I myself don't want to go flickering my wound checker to see if I'm dead or not. Or if I've passed out or not, you know?
Yeah.
One thing that I was thinking about doing with this little front page section, if you scroll down, by the way, here's the current and my proposed new version of the move boxes and weapon, but I made the weapon and move things the same this time.
I really like this new setup for those.
Yeah. I moved range up slightly to be on the same line as the element, because I figured this all technically matters, like, the most thing. And then I put a uses box, specifically so that way, if you have something like building power, you can keep track of how many times you've used it, or if you're playing in a game where there is, like, a specific amount of uses on a thing, or for weapons to keep track of your ammo. Like, this is how many uses of it you have left. Like, let's say you have a 6 shooter, so you put 5 out of 6 because you shot once. Or, like, 10 out of 10 because you have a full mag. That's the only, like, true new addition completely. The rest is just restructuring. That and the discount on the EXP tracker at the bottom. There's now a section for keeping track of your damn discount on it. Should have been there in the first place anyway, it just kind of wasn't.
I think this is all looking good.
One thing that I was thinking about doing, and a good part about this is because people forget that they damn well have them, I'm thinking that the first 2 boxes here, like on the front sheet, and regardless of the clutter thing, I, again, have so many people that ask me to keep this here. I'm thinking what we could do is make the top 2 one, the one on the left be the physical strike, and the top right one be the ethereal strike.
So we're only keeping strike on the front page?
Strike, and then, like, because of space things, probably filling it out with, like, a pair of empty boxes. But, like, I'm also fine if we actually chop it to just be the strikes.
I'd say just
But
the strikes.
I at least... Yeah. Also, I think at this point, I just thought about this, I think people are avoiding strike upgrades because of the 1.5 times cost.
Probably?
I think people have been, because I have seen almost no one actually upgrade strike at all ever for any reason, even though it's really useful.
I think it's one of 2 things. They either forget about it, or it's the 1.5 time cost.
Yeah, so we might want to revisit that. I just thought about that, but in order to finish out things, keep it so that way at least the strikes are on the front page. I'm kind of now that you've actually seen it, I'm kind of in favor of doing. Excuse me while I just mangle this real quick. Like keeping it to like that size-ish, if I do that. Because I feel like keeping 4 boxes on the front will not be too onerous. Especially because this is going to be vertically filled out anyway a bit because of, like, the range bands and the like.
I still personally feel like these should be moved. I personally would prefer them all moved over to the Move Slots tab.
To be fair, it's on both, actually.
I know, but I think it should all be removed from the main page. But that is just my opinion on it.
Yeah, like, on one hand, I definitely get it. It would declutter a bit. On the other hand, the last time that we ran polls on this, and constantly every time it gets brought up, there is a non-insignificant, like, at least half the people are just like, I want the front move boxes. Especially if they only have, like, 4 moves overall. I think they really like just having it there instead of having to go to a different tab. But yeah, at the very least, keeping strikes there is something that I would, like, really want, but... I'm fine with axing the front page ones, but I definitely we're keeping the strike section.
That is...
Jesus Christ, people do not use strike.
That is my consideration there. I will allow the strikes to stay, but I think the rest should be removed. Including the attack information and whatnot. I think those should be just removed from the front, left on the move slots.
Alright, so that would leave this. there. That would be the strike section. That actually fits like perfectly. I accidentally made these the exact same width, so it fits perfectly already. Lamau. Entirely incidental. So in that case, I'll probably use like this central space that I just highlighted a bit to add things like the accessory section.
That'll work.
And what I can do is there are certain of these that I can just like, you know, Thanos snap off of the front page, because if we're adding a condition and utility tab, then you know, I can remove some of this stuff and replace it with either more useful active things or more likely just Thanos snap some of them and reclaim visual clarity in space. We are kind of hitting tab bloat, but also the only other option is having a hyper condensed front page.
And I don't think anybody wants that.
Because I could condense the front page even more, I just have been avoiding it for ease of use reasons.
No, thank you on more hyper condensed.
Please don't.
There's a reason why I have not done that. And I just keep adding new tabs instead. On the plus side, actually, we're reclaiming a tab because now there isn't going to be there doesn't need to be a different section for move and weapon slots.
Yeah, just rename it to attacks.
Attack, yeah. So we could actually reclaim one of those, which is nice. Okay, did I go through all of my things? Defensive trainer. Oh yeah, another thing I'm adding in the scar type reference. I thought that you guys would. It's a little bit messed up right now, like on the thing, because I was moving stuff around. But if you look here, I did acronym things slightly. You're gonna have to forgive me. Affinity, stab, intrinsic. So what this will do, you can mark off if you have affinity
where
with
are we?
something.
On
In the
the
star type reference.
Star type reference tab.
Ah. Okay.
I conglomerated things a little bit, and I think made it slightly more readable. And you can mark off if you have affinity with something, stab with something, or if it's one of your intrinsic types. And what's going to happen is I haven't encoded this properly yet. If you mark off like these two on your intrinsics, it'll conglomerate it into the type defenses, and it will just, you know, use those.
So it's going to autofill that for you.
It'll autofill. And that's what that column is for.
And affinity means that you don't have to spend more experience, and S's...
Because we, technically
Stab.
speaking, don't have a good way, except for listing them all out in the feat section, of listing out what affinities you have and what stab purchases you have. Stab feats you have. So I figured we kind of have the... if... Like, on the old version of it, we have just, like, a bunch of empty space underneath where we had the key. So I condensed the key a little bit into being, it just mark off if it's -1 or +1 difficulty. And then vertically threw all of this in, so that way it quite literally just completely filled out the section. In, like, the simplest way possible.
That would be awesome.
Well, once it's working.
Once it's working. Obviously, right now, the intrinsic thing does not... I know how to make it work, it's just... Like most things that I do with the encoding of this, I don't like doing it before I'm done blowing everything up. And also, it's literally just going to be annoying and time-consuming, but it'll be worth it. Besides that, the only other thing that I'm thinking of adding in is just to help people keep track of it, because they fucking... I have heard people get confused over what do I have left too many times of just because we're chopping out many of these like 3-box things. Having a box where people can keep track of their available actions is probably not a bad idea.
Probably not.
Because I've heard it multiple times where someone is like, okay, I'm gonna do. Wait, hold on, let me check. And then, like, they do something, and then they go and double check something because they changed their mind about something. And they're like, wait, shit, what actions have I used? Did I already use my standard action? I've heard that too many times.
But I've also heard that with every other system.
Well, yes, but if it's right there on the front of the sheet, again, where interactive things are supposed to be.
Yeah, fair.
If they don't mark it off, it's their own damn fault at that point. But yeah, so I'm going to put stuff like size category, aura size, feet limit, primary range, all of that kind of stuff on a utility sheet and throw conditions on there. With the conditions being, having all of the resistance skills pre-listed for you. And then, like, some custom condition things, because people are going to make custom conditions. I guess the thing to go over with that is, do we want to keep this small little condition box on the front?
I'd say separate.
Or do we want
page?
Fully separate? Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. I think that covers basically everything that I wanted covered with the sheet stuff. Obviously, there is the case of I still have no earthly idea what the perk system is going to look like. But with that in mind, it's going to go on a tab.
As of right now, that may no longer be coming.
Okay.
Raijin is not able to work on that anymore, and he doesn't have a whole lot for it already, or as is, so we may be canning that for now.
Alright, because I know you wanted me to wait on like some things for at least having a skeleton of that, so that way I can include it in this sheet. So I sort of avoided doing a couple of things because of that, and then but now, especially knowing that it's probably not going to happen, especially before this update, character sheet update, that is, I'm just gonna earmark it as it will go on a tab at some point in future.
Yeah.
Other than that, what are you how you guys feeling about the sort of changes that I'm gonna be making here?
I think it's looking good.
So far, so good. Looking forward to more declutter.
Yeah.
I just don't know what we can do to declutter it more.
Oh no, I trust me. Like I know how to declutter. The reason that it is so cluttered is just because it's like a lot of this stuff was new at the time and people didn't know what they were doing. So I was like, okay, because we have all of this new shit and people still were messing up referencing it and all of that. I threw it on the front sheet so that way it was right there for them, which was probably not like the best long-term decision, but I already knew that I was going to revamp the sheet again anyway, so I was just like, but yeah, no, there are like half of these boxes I can move to a different sheet. Like the resources box, that can go. The EX Dyson spent resources, that'll get referenced a lot, so that gets to say.
I do
maneuvers,
actually personally really like at least the boost per game box.
Yeah, even though boost per game is technically equal to primary scale, so it's on the front page anyway.
Fair.
It's just a situation where I was like, having a discrete section for it, not a bad idea. But technically speaking, all of the information on that is in the attributes box.
Yeah, that's fair. Maybe you can put it into, like, here somewhere, like in the top, in the title under spent resources.
Oh, where I do I can... If I just whip this real quick... If I do like this, and then have it fill out, like, with how many each of them have, and then, like, that,
Yeah.
and then it goes... Little power... points... change that to not do that, change it to do that, and then... boost dice. Just change it to be like that-ish.
Yeah, I think that would be very helpful. We can get rid
Okay.
of this, and it still has that reference.
The only thing that I'm going to do in addition to that is do this and internals to increase the visual clarity of what are in each section. See, now you can clearly delineate, okay, this is where vigor starts and ends now.
Yeah.
Because before it was the top bar delineating that, so now that that's broken apart, I need to do that. Yep. But besides that, condition box, that's going. Buff condition box, that's going. Roll calculator, that's going. Movement, that's going. This, like, almost entire middle section here is going to go and get decluttered. Health feats is getting moved. Resources is getting moved. So, like, effectively, just to demo it... Oh, wait, hold on. I should make undoing this because... You know what? I actually have this in the other sheet anyway, so... all of that, at the very least, is going. Some of it's getting slightly replaced, but look at how much that would declutter it.
Yeah, that definitely looks good.
Obviously, I'm adding in a small little action tracker as well as the defensive penalty and the death one, but that's 3, and honestly, those all can probably fit, like, right here anyway. So, in reality, it's like, this is how much space we're going to be able to declutter with.
Yeah, looking good. The only other thing before we switch then, unless there was more you wanted to go over with the sheet.
No, that was it. Mostly because the other thing, so I'm like, should we include this? I then realized later, I'm just going to make a utility sheet.
Yeah. So, obviously we have not gotten feedback from everybody, but it looks like aside from some questions aside from some questions which we've already addressed, such as, you know, going back to non-lethal, I should clarify. It looks like people are saying it's something we should try out. There are a couple of questions on how it functions, which we already sorted, where it's the same as lethal. It's just, you know, it's got only those couple of exceptions. GibGab did bring up a good point of how it would interact with healing.
Well, we already allow ordering for things like when you put, like, protected on someone, if you want it to be at armor layer, if you want it to be at health layer, that kind of stuff. So I'd say let them pick which one it heals first, if they're getting true heal. This only matters for true healing. Let them pick which one goes first. For the case of things like rest, obviously the non-lethal damage will fall off first, and then all of the rest of it goes into the lethal damage you've received. But
Well, non-lethal will
the...
just non-lethal will just automatically disappear, and then you can do your rolls.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
You know, obviously that'll happen automatically anyway. So it doesn't matter for rest. All that matters for is things like second wind and true healing moves, of which let them pick. They're gonna pick lethal first anyway. But, like, I guess we could just say it heals lethal first.
All right. I was going to say the alternative is, from what I understand with Pathfinder, if you get 1 point of healing, then it heals 1 point of non-lethal and 1 point of lethal.
Yeah, we're not doing that.
Okay.
A lot
We're
of
not
people
doing that.
forget how that rule works because it's complicated.
Because it's complicated, and also, no. That's kind of dumb anyway. It would also make it so that way groups trying to that are like splitting their stuff are literally trolling, and if you aren't all doing lethal or all doing non-lethal, you are literally trolling. Because then otherwise a single healing move comes in and it heals twice the amount it did before.
Fair
Or
enough.
a second wind happens and it heals twice the amount.
All
And I
right.
don't think you want to be buffing Nova's second wind healing.
No, absolutely not.
He can only do it 5 times per day.
So yeah, we are going to be implementing non-lethal as a separate...
That works pretty well.
All right, sorry. What about non-lethal?
For those that can't see, Matt, I was going to type this in, and Maddie just typed into the notes doc, "Get out of my swamp."
Oh, I thought you were laughing about the quote Gimmon did.
Oh no, I was laughing at Mattio's.
I was laughing because of the quote. Quote for Nova Buffed. At Gimmond. Quote number 306. Sir, would you like some poison? We have only the top shelf. By Mattio.
I don't remember saying that.
Stardew Valley. Last year.
What?
Yes,
Yeah, no,
Guru.
I just noticed someone had created a new line in the notes document, so I took over that line and said, "Get out of my swamp." Oh, that makes sense, Ido. I think I was playing an entirely different game.
Oh yeah, you were.
Can we get that quote updated so the original context is intact?
Nope, cannot
No,
update
because
it.
quotes are no context.
That too.
All right.
Plus, it's funnier to think that you were saying that while, Stardew Valley was being played.
Yeah. Also, the extra hilarity of we only add context if the context makes it funnier.
Exactly.
Otherwise, no, sir, you do not get context.
Just like by the one there. Ah, yay, a murder!
To be fair, Shadows of Doubt gives plenty of context for that.
It does.
Is that a game or?
Yes.
Ah, okay.
It's an investigatory game.
You play as a detective, and at that point in the game, I was sitting there bored. Like, come on, is something going to happen in this city? And then a murder report came in, and I'm like, yes! Something to do! And as soon as I said, oh, yay, a murder! I'm like, oh, shit. They're gonna want that quoted.
It could be worse, Sim. It could be worse. I'm not going to state how it could be worse, because that will instantly get quoted, but it could be worse.
Come on, you didn't want to say it.
But, anyways, we got
Yeah.
limited time here. For non-lethal damage, it will be tracked separately. It will automatically dissipate during any rest. If you have only non-lethal damage and go below 0 HP, you will not suffer a wound.
How much HP?
0. Or go 2 or below 0. What else do we have for that? We can put in there healing. The source of the healing can determine what is affected first, whether lethal or non-lethal. But Guru, to kind of address your question a bit, if most of your party is trying to kill somebody and you are the only one trying to just knock them out, they're going to kill the person. That's just something that we cannot change the system to address. You're going to have to change your party to align with what you want instead.
Yep. And if that doesn't happen, then honestly just kind of unfortunate. There is nothing that we as developers can really do while still making a good system to account for that.
We can't make it so that way one person always overrules, unfortunately, but we can't take away people's freedom to make a choice.
Yeah. Now, technically speaking, like, you know, the whole lethal thing, like, that can override an entire group's decision to take someone hostage or capture them or all of that. But at that point, that is a character having their character kill someone that is, you know, probably unconscious at that point, and that is an entirely different issue.
What is the silly interaction?
I mean, not... Okay. So does a person generally gain a wound when going to 0 or below, period?
Yes, although usually you don't get multiple in one scene, it just makes the one you get worse. Maybe not in intensity, but either in terms of the narrative effects or how difficult it's going to be to get rid of it. The storyteller can still go no gain stage 2 right now because of this.
Okay, because my initial thought upon seeing the way this rule is worded was being an absolute cretin by dealing a pathetically small amount of lethal damage to someone who is already unconscious, or to someone who's already at 0.
That will give them a wound. That's intended. That's not a silly rules interaction. That's literally how it works.
If somebody's unconscious and you go to break their leg, they can't exactly stop you.
Or if someone is effectively, like, you know, winded and staggered and is, like, effectively, like, having a moment of, like, ear-ringing shell shock over things or whatever, and you go and shoot out their kneecap, yeah, congratulations. Like,
well, I think you missed the bit where I said a pathetically small amount of damage.
yeah.
A pathetically small amount of potential.
Yeah,
No,
damage.
that is intended. That is how it works, yes.
Look, a 22 still hurts, even if it's a pathetic amount of damage.
Yeah.
I was just gonna punch the guy.
That would still, if you're trying to punch lethally, that is still the equivalent of you lightly rocking their jaw or temple while they're staggered.
I don't know. What makes it a silly interaction to me is they've theoretically not had the capacity to take this wound, and then the one punch I gave them to the ribs while they were down while they were winded is what did them in, and now they're wounded.
Yeah, that could even like a light punch, if placed in the right spot at the right time, can severely damage someone still. You might not have been aiming for it, and it might not have otherwise dealt too much damage.
Of course,
But,
but if that's... Sorry, go ahead.
No, that is working as intended.
Mario just finds it funny.
Yeah, and I am kind of just being a little shit, because my next point was, if that's our justification, then why couldn't I wound someone dealing that much damage to them while they're at full health?
Because they're prepared for it.
Yeah, fair enough, you're right.
There you go.
Anyways, sorry for impeding.
Mario
I mean,
Q.
Oh no, I appreciate the discussion of any kind. Like, you never know when something like that might actually poke a hole into something that we did not think of.
Yep.
Might not
Now,
at this time, but don't let it stop you from bringing it up in the future.
Yeah.
Be a little shit before a player bees a little shit and abuses the crap out of it.
Yeah. Although also players abusing the crap out of it is also something that we kind of want at this moment because, again, playtest. Like, if someone is going to break something, now is the best time for it to be broken. Obviously, we prefer that you try and let us know that, hey, I found something, but also, if it's going to get broken, it might as well be now.
I'm
Yeah.
just giggling at the idea of... Sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Now I'm giggling at the idea of someone waiting for 1.0 and then telling us how they one-shot every boss they run up on using a toothpick and a pencil sharpener.
Long story made short, it is impossible to make a perfect game. You cannot prevent that from somehow happening by somebody's stretching of the rules somewhere.
Yep.
Oh, of course. I'm not
So-
saying that's something to yearn for, but I just...
Somebody is going to do it. Somebody's going to message us after we release everything and be like, hey, by the way, did you know you could do this? And we're going to sit there like, what the fuck, dude?
Yeah. Now, look, I've spent a large amount of time ironing out the vast majority of these edge cases. I have sent Zim a non-insignificant amount of messages going, hey, by the way, we need to change this wording by like 2 words. Granted, I did this a lot more early on, but like when we were like rapidly designing a lot of this stuff, I sent Zim a lot of those messages.
Yeah. Yeah.
Why do you sound so tired hearing that?
Because I would send him multiple a day every day.
Oh.
On the plus side, it's a lot harder to Munchkin and Gremlin our system. It's not impossible, but it is the bar has been raised a lot.
All right, though. Tal, Eric, did you look at the notes? And I feel like there's something else we wanted to note for non-lethal damage, but my brain does not want to think of it.
Let me get
let's
there.
see.
It's a little hard for me to read right now, but let me look.
Track separately, dissipate during any rest. If dealt only non-lethal damage going 2 or below 0 HP, character won't suffer a rune. Benefactor may...
Yeah.
That's one. Because if you just say will be tracked separately, it should still be noted that the combination still
yeah.
determines the current HP. That was the big thing that was missing from this. Besides that, no, I think that's it.
Hi, Dirta.
Hi, Zara.
Alright. Well, I think on that note, we will call this a close.
Very good.
It's
I'm fading.
Scar Dev Day?
What, Ren?
Was it a good Scar Dev Day?
We went through quite a lot of stuff. Didn't have
Yep.
time for the class idea that I had, but that can wait. But thank you everybody for joining us so far on the stream today. That was a DevTales session. Check out our website, zgfgaming.com. We've got links for our Discord, Telegram, Mastodon, Blue Sky, Patreon, and more. They are on the website as well as down in the description below through our link tree. Thank you to my patrons, tippers, and subscribers. It is your support that keeps this channel alive and going. I cannot do this without your guys' help and your support, so thank you. Consider becoming a patron over at patreon.com/zgfgaming. It's one of the best ways to support the channel, though you can also do so by going and checking out my friends who also stream. All 4 of those that were here in the stream with me tonight are also streamers. You'll see their various Twitch links in the description below on YouTube. But you can also help out by subscribing to our YouTube, as well as picking up packs of cards through stream loots. But for now, thank you so much for joining, and I bid you all the most fondest adieu.
Bye-bye!
Bye bye.
Bye bye.
Bye.